All right, Steve, we are back with another episode of the Work Week After Hours. Welcome back, buddy. Happy New Year.
I think we should just call out the fact that 21 did not knock us down. We're still here. It's
That's right.
22. We are still standing, brother.
We got a smile on our face too. And I think that kind of leads into the episode, right? Like, um, you know, I personally don't like resolutions, right? I'm
hmm
I'm 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 probably, I guess, because of my journey through life, you get hardened to a lot of things. And I recently made a post, I think, on my personal page recently about, like, you know, bad shit's still gonna happen. You know, we're gonna lose people. We're gonna be disappointed. All these things are gonna happen. It's still gonna take hard work to, like all this is true no matter what year, no matter what resolution, no matter what cool saying we trick ourselves into thinking that somehow going to get it. So what we got to do is wake up. We got to be present. We got to go. And I know you're pumped. And I talk about us smiling. I know you're pumped about coming into. We've got a lot of stuff working. We got a lot of stuff going on. We got a lot of really cool stuff that we can't even talk about yet that we're working on.
Yeah.
That leads us into this. I know a lot of people are stressed out about the future of work. I
Yeah.
think because we have access to so much data and we're talking to so many different people, you and I are very optimistic about it.
Yeah. Well, let's unwrap that a little bit because I'm very optimistic because and again, we're coming here, we're coming live. It's still dark. It is still unknown and there's still a lot of moving parts, and you and I were sharing off air things in our own personal lives with kids and schools and so forth that are frustrating us. But here's the thing that gets me most excited. And we'll start macro and then we can go. There's so many micro pieces
Yeah.
to unravel. We got a few episodes on thinking about this year, thinking about what's in front of us. We have we have the most receptivity right now to change in all parts of work, life that we've ever had, education. And let's I'm excited because I think people are going to start to see, we've been holding our breath. We've been waiting for things to go back. We're now pretty sure won't. And so let's play for an uncertain future and play for winning and trying to thrive in new ways with different possibilities. And that I'm really encouraged because I got to tell you, all the clients that I'm talking to, they're starting to see, okay, now we need to make decisions. We need to start acting. We can't keep waiting anymore. So it's a great landscape of fertility, if you will,
Yep.
of opportunity as we go into 2022. And yeah, we're like you said, the one size fits all mentality, I think, is gonna rest in peace. You know, that everyone's got to be this, or everyone's got to be in the office, or everyone's got to be remote. I think it's over. Like the trend is all of the above is probably how we're going to be working going forward. All kinds of ways in different capacities, and that's terrifying, exciting at the same time.
Yep. So many we've talked a lot about this. So many people have modeled what they do. And I mean, big businesses do it, I guess, but a lot more of the meat on the bone, if you will, the medium to small businesses, which make up a majority of the workplaces, historically they have followed models that have, quote unquote, been successful with bigger, more powerful, more successful, more financially profitable companies.
Mhm.
I know you talked a lot about it in 2021. I guess my first question to you is, do you still see do you see 2022 being more of a year of experimentation in that, if we're not going to one size fits all, that kind of fits into the mold of we have to just try things, right?
hmm Yeah, I think we all want to make a decision that's going to bring more normalcy and more predictability to our future. And this is the frustrating part. I would like that. I would like to tell you it's possible, but I'm here to tell you we are in for a messy, at least 6 to 9 months, probably a year of experimenting. But what I'm starting to see, Shane, is I think people are experimenting more with confidence now. I mean, in a way, that's what a startup is. You're just experimenting all the time. And that's why we've talked in earlier episodes. We have more people going to startups. We have more people founding startups than we've ever been measuring it. And that's spreading beyond just the United States. One of the most amazing statistics that I came across the last week and I love this week as a reader of all the stuff that happened last year, stuff people think are going to happen this year, just chock full of really interesting things. Business Insider had this one story, which I need to almost do like a whole separate episode or post around, which is there were something close to 560 companies that hit unicorn status this year, right? You saw that article?
Yes.
560. In 2021, in 2020, there were 70. 70. Now, it could have been because investors hit the brakes. There's a lot of other factors that go, or many factors that go into unicorn. One of them is valuation that comes from investors and comes from optimism of the market. 20 was also an election year, right? So there's lots of things that are in the background. But I think here we are like, wow, that's not what you would think in a dark era that we have 500 and something companies hit unicorn, and the majority, more than 50% in the United States, right?
So that number is up all around the world, not just here in the United States. So these big companies, I was just reading here, India set a record with 33 unicorns. That's massive. And the reason, like I don't think if you actually look at it, it's really simple. This isn't rocket science figuring out why this is the case. The workplace became forced to be distributed. So now all of a sudden, if you have the funds raised in India and you're willing to pay Silicon Valley prices, you can get really good talent. You and I were talking to some folks who are work in another country working with their financial world, and they're like, well, a lot of our people go and work, and they work this, and they get, they're working for companies in America and in Europe, making their wages, but living here. So it's hard for local companies to recruit. Well, then you need to find another country that has what you need that isn't happening, and then pull those people into your country. So it's these things of, the number. What was the number? 4.5 million workers last November. The numbers just came out today. 4.5 million workers quit their job in November. It's a record. Okay. While being posted, employers posted 10.6 million jobs.
Yeah.
That's more than double, with you already having a large group of people also not employed. So that means you probably have triple the amount of jobs out there than you do people right now. Yeah. So where does that go, right? This is how innovation happens. There's going to be some innovation happen to where restaurants are going to be automated. And I just saw where people are going to, like, robots are making pizza, right? Or they're doing these things. Somebody somewhere, that's going to happen, because you got to continue to stay in business. So innovation happens, and that's how these things, but doesn't mean it doesn't become more human. It doesn't mean that it's like so I'll give you an example. I was talking to somebody, and they were like, oh yeah, Domino's is testing out a mobile oven. So you make the pizza, you put it in there.
Yeah.
It cooks and knows the time that it needs to cook and the temperature it needs to cook to get to you, to deliver you fresh pizza. And they were like, well, yeah, that's killing the delivery drivers. I said, let me ask you this. You think that that's going to cost people employment? I actually think it's going to create more jobs. They were like, no, you're not going to have any more drivers. You're not going to have any this. I was like, well, what happens when you get that pizza and it's not right? What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to pick up and call. So now they're going to have to increase customer experience and customer service. So now they're going to have more people answering the phones, because the guy at the local shop doesn't know. Yes, sir. Hey, we'll get that out to you. We'll rush that out. Like, we can't look at this as like a doomsday thing. And that's right. I think with so much that's happening out there in this experimentation, like you said, one size doesn't fit all. The bank can't make, a remote bank that goes around and does that. I get that. Right. So it's these things that, like, you just have to experiment. And I think that's going to be a big thing this year. We know it is. So my question, how much does patience also have to play a role in that?
Oh man, patience. Our patience has been stretched so thin right now. This is documented case of depression, anxiety, fear. As humans, we do not like the unknown. We just don't. And when we have a void of information, we assume the worst. But here's some things I want to react to about what you just said, which I think is really important for us to land in the outlook for 22. And your great example of the mobile ovens, okay, for pizza delivery. We go back to the evolution of the internet, and let's take a look at travel agents, right? Remember, the internet replaced travel agents, but it created probably 10x new jobs than were existing in a travel agent world. The rub is not all the travel agents took those new jobs, right? And so this gets to what I think is going to increasingly be recognized in 22, and we will start to see an evolution of organizational focus beyond 22, which is I'm going to have to become a skill building organization. I can't find the talent I need in the market. I can't find it fast enough. I can't get it and can't onboard it. I'm going to need to build it. And so, if Domino's has got scale, they're going to say, okay, my drivers, what's the aptitude I need for customer service? What are the skills that a driver, because it's probably pretty varied. What do they need and what can we do? Because it's going to be probably cheaper than unfilled customer service jobs for months and months for me to train. And someone's got 50%. And this is another thing that I think is going to hit big. And then I can tell I'm already got you on the edge of your seat, which is we are no longer going to see people recruiting someone that's got 80% of the skills needed in a job description. We're going to start to see the evolution of that spec be if you're 50%, hey, you're a viable candidate.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm going to have to grow you somehow, some way, and very few fully qualified people are am I going to find. So I'm going to have to change as an organization. I'm excited because I've always been in the development game, but that's a huge shift, Shane. Huge shift. And every business starting to realize our business today is not going to be the same business next year.
Yeah.
So are we always going to be able to recruit to keep pace with that? No, we're going to have to become a skill building organization.
So does Domino's even need, so who knows better? If I have a customer service that's dealing with automated delivery that we've automated, we've invested the money, it's at scale, we're doing it. Who knows better that experience and what that actually feels like as a human better than the people who've been doing it, right? So now as I'm talking to somebody, why would I not rather that person who's delivered 17,000 pizzas in their career to answer the phone and say, yes, sir. Actually, let me look at the route. Okay. Looks like, yeah. I'll be honest with you. I used to drive. So, it used to be like this. And then, so let's look at this. This is probably what happened. I see we've got some traffic right here. Let me get this and we'll get on the phone. We'll get one right out to you. We'll actually have a person from the store get it there ASAP. Like it's these things that,
with some cookies and some other things to ease your discomfort.
So it's an experience. You talked about travel agents. When I was at your book launch, I met an awesome lady who was there, and she was telling me that she's made a career in a business out of being a very personalized, experiential, where she helps people looking to go set up vacations in Italy. And and then now she trains people that are helping people to do that. So she's monetized the training of what she does. And it's those things that just put us in a place of you gotta experiment and you gotta realize that you've hit on this a lot. I think this is another really important part. You've said, and you can expound on it, that stop trying to solve solutions for right now in the middle of a pandemic as if this is a moment in time. This is actually what we're heading to. You need to realize that this is going to be way more real life commonplace than it is. We're just going through something.
Right. We say, try to avoid situational thinking and look at it more as, systemic thinking or sustainable thinking, right? Like, what can we learn now? Let me give an example. I feel like I may have covered this in an earlier episode. I don't know, but it's a great story from the LinkedIn days, which was we were just getting hammered with recruiting, and our biggest volume of recruiting was in sales one year. and we were trying to hire salespeople to sell our recruiting product. Okay, and we just couldn't find them fast enough, and the profile was so varied. We thought, let's build these people. So we decided to switch entirely to hiring salespeople because we didn't have a great track record of them being successful consistently. And let's go see if we can get new grads and try something new. So easier to hire new grads than it is to hire experienced people, generally speaking. So we got these new grads from campus and we put them for their first 3 months, made them learn how to recruit. So they're using, to your point around the delivery people moving to customer service, who better to be able to address service issues than people who are dealing with what you're struggling with, right? So we had never had a lot of salespeople ever do recruiting before, and we never had people using our product. So guess what happened? After about 6 months, I would say 25% of the people hired to do sales and started as recruiter fell in love with recruiting and stayed in recruiting and said, no, I love this.
Yeah.
And so that was a pretty cool, unexpected surprise because and how we solved the recruiting problem. How we solved the recruiting salespeople also solved the recruiting problem.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thinking and it was, I can't say that we were the sharpest knives in the drawer and aren't we the smartest kids on the block because we figured that out, but it was necessity forced us to have to be created. That's the point that you made earlier. Like these hard times are really pushing our creative juices and innovative capabilities, right?
Yeah. Hard times. There's a quote going around, and he talks about a story where this guy talked to this billionaire. We'll call him a billionaire, and he says, I drive a Ferrari. My son drives a Mercedes. My grandson is probably gonna not have a car and struggle. And I'm kind of paraphrasing it a little bit, but essentially what he's talking about is hard times create innovation, create success, but success creates soft people. So it's a cycle, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at that cycle as a business, what happens in business, right? I often talk a lot about myself. The struggle and the hard parts about me are what gave me the experience and gave me the knowledge to put myself in a position to be able to do the things that I get to do every day. A business like LinkedIn in the early days, even before you got there, when it's a startup and it's like hard and gross and difficult and not politically correct and not following the rules and breaking the rules and not following all these things. And then we get $600 million of funds, and now we got money to do whatever, and everybody's eating good, and everybody's got a real nice car. And times like right now, we're being forced to go back. We're being forced to think. You talk about it being a startup. I agree with that. It's more entrepreneurship, and you talked about fixing a problem using the resources that you have now. You and I have talked about this a lot in our private conversations of if your marketing team is the best marketing team in your market, in your demographic, in your whatever it is, if they're killing it, but you're struggling to hire people and staff people, bring your marketing company into those meetings and sit down and say, hey, help us fix this. What are we doing wrong? What would you do? It's worth a shot. You've already got those people there who intimately know your business.
Yeah. You remind me of something I'm struggling with right now in my thinking, which is a couple of articles I read this weekend around the frustration many parents have that their kids are falling behind in school. Okay. Falling behind. And part of me is thinking that's flawed thinking right now, I think.
Yeah,
and I'm not comfortable enough to sort of really come out with it, but I guess I am since I'm bringing it up here, which is I'm like, hang on a second. The life experiences that our children are facing right now are phenomenal. Having to adjust, having to adapt, having to learn differently, having to see your parents work at home. We're not just seeing our kids work at home. Our kids are seeing us work at home and seeing the family dynamic shift, seeing cultural changes happen everywhere you are, having to wear masks, having to see how people handle that, not handle it, dealing with the vaccination, kids sharing, certain families handling vaccination versus that is so powerful. I don't think you can even compare it to, oh, I'm falling behind in algebra or my grammar is slipping. Why are we even having that conversation? And by the way, the whole world's facing this. So who are they falling behind from?
Yes.
Some other generation that's older than them? That's not their peer group.
So
Their peer group is all going through this. So why are we even having this conversation?
So I'll shine a little bit of light on this, and maybe you haven't even thought about it this way. And I know you're a very humble dad and professional, but I've had the joy of meeting your family and spending time at your house and those things. Imagine what has happened, because I also know you and I've been on speakerphone and the boys have been in the car.
Right.
They're picking up on conversations and picking up on bits of pieces of information from one of the top 5 people in the world. Like they don't get like that does what they do. That's what you are. Like, I'm not blowing smoke, like the numbers and what says what it is. Like, and argue with somebody else if you want to argue, but that's the case of where we're at. So they're getting to talk and understand and get a peek behind the curtain of what life is like, and what the knowledge that you're sharing and the conversations that we have. They're picking up on all of this in a way where it's an education for them. I know it's you, and I've talked about it. You've got a son who's taken an interest in the stock market and these different things. He's like, Dad, he's coming to me like, you're like, what do you mean? Like, okay, like he's wearing you out. It's this evolution of, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I want to watch how I word this. I am not a huge fan of the one size fits all education system when it comes to higher education specifically. Typically because I think it creates a very stagnant and a very non-creative, very safe environment.
Vanilla.
Here's what you're told. I'm 41. I'll age myself. I'll be 42 this year. I was told, you go to high school, you get good grades, you'll be able to get into one of these good colleges. When you get to that college, you get good grades, you'll get a piece of paper after 4 years and paying this X amount of money, and then we'll get you a job making this. That's a very safe environment, right? So it creates, like, we were being gained on by a lot. I'll call the United States. We were being gained on by a lot of foreign, non-American economies over the last 20 years. I think there's a lot, if we can figure out how to harness it, if we'll tap into the people like yourself and these other people who've been a part of these really fast growing companies that have gone on to change the world, it really has, then we'll realize that we're creating innovators. We're creating solutionists. We're creating people who, I want to know how many, I'd love to know this. When I heard you say that, I'd love to know how many kids have started helping out cooking dinner. How many teenagers who never cooked previously before the pandemic now play a part in cooking dinner because they were home. Mom and dad still had a video call and Zoom call, and it was, hey, it might have been very simple. I'm going to set this out, and here's the hamburger helper, and you make this and you do this. I'd love to know what that number, because I guarantee you it's a lot higher than what we probably realize. So to your point, we are creating a group of, I'm living proof that algebra 2 and above, you don't have to be a math whiz to be successful, right? Nowhere that's going to be the case, right? And you financially trust my judgment and where I'm at. So I think we're in a good place, right? So I agree, that I think that's what we're creating, very resilient, tough minded. We're used to this world that you're not tough, you're not working hard. In our generation, if you're not out swinging a hammer and out working in a factory or out busting your knuckles, or you don't come in when the sun goes down and you leave when, like working harder physically doesn't necessarily mean you're working smarter and you're getting more done. And I think that we're entering into a new era of that, to where a lot of these kids realize, I don't want to, like, no, I'm not going to, like, no, there's a better way to solve this problem.
Yeah. And
Fixing
think
it.
about these kids, and I want to carry this forward to using the kids as a metaphor for organizations, because I think
Yes.
organizations, are starting to feel like, well, maybe we can do this differently. We're seeing more creativity in how people are getting paid, more creativity in how jobs are being structured. That stuff, you couldn't touch that 2 years ago. And now, we're seeing all kinds of new approaches, which I'm super excited about. Let me call out something that hit my radar recently. I don't know if you and I talked about this, but I definitely talked to my friends in Spain. Spain just passed a quote unquote startup law.
Yep.
Here's a country that ranked prior to this year 97th on the World Bank's ranking of ease of starting a new business. Okay. And in Europe itself, they're one of the lowest. In the world, they're really low. But they just changed the model of taxation so that if you can receive 50,000 euros worth of stock options without paying tax, compared to what the prior limit was of 12,000 euros. That's massive. So they just went up about 3.5 times, just like that. And what that essentially, what you can translate that into is what we were talking about earlier, which is, this is get out of jail free money. This is go experiment and you're not going to get hammered. This is a little bit of buffer, because we're recognizing as a crusty, no disrespect, because there's if you spend any time in Spain, there's a lot of tradition, and there's a lot of respect and care for their history. But the business leaders I know there who are forward thinking are very frustrated the slowness to change the tax law and the education systems to support a new economy. And the best thing that happened to them was 2008. They almost came to their knees, and now they were only an import country, and now they're more of an export country, and they're learning to be. And these hard times are when these shifts happen. And it's for me to see Spain do that, and then see countries like Portugal. Didn't Portugal pass a law around
Time of work
protecting
can't be,
working at home? Right?
yeah, work-life balance, like more of a work-life balance law.
Right, right. I don't know how you monitor that, but I like the interest in, let's try to keep the playing field so that people are still feeling inspired and so forth. So, I mean, this moment in time where we're facing different things is real. I really feel optimistic, Shane, that we're going to see some cool stuff come out of it. Like I just said, the
In
changes in
Spain.
comp
Yeah.
that we've talked about in even other episodes, that's the beginning of something really refreshing. We're also, by the way, and this is a whole nother huge category we go into, wages are going to grow more this year than in any 1 year period since we've been looking at wages.
Yep.
And that's not a problem.
No.
Except if you've planned for no wage growth, right?
Yep.
I sit on 3 boards right now. 2 of the boards, the board of directors pushed back on the company because they came in with a lowball salary budget for the next year. We're just like, get that out of here. We're not doing cost of living this year.
Yep.
We're not in a cost of living year.
Yep.
Forget the 3%. We need meaningful money. It's tough times right now, and we want to make sure the right people are getting rewarded meaningfully, right?
Yep. Absolutely. You were talking about Spain and some of the stuff that they changed. I looked it up while you were talking about it. So historically, to start a company in the United Kingdom costs 70 pounds. In Spain, before they changed this law, it cost 5,000 euros to start a company. So the other thing that they put in place is reducing. This is a bit of a buzzword when you start dealing with expats and international communities and stuff, is bureaucracy, right? Bureaucracy slows things down. Portugal, it's a big thing expats talk about. It's just slower to get normal things that we get done quick. They get done slow. So one of it is you no longer you can start a company completely online in Spain, much like you can do here, in a very streamlined process. So now you don't have to pay a notary. You don't have to pay a registry. You just go online, start a company, and off you go. And I think that, along with some of the tax deductions and investment money and those things, so essentially what you're saying, and I love how this relates to kids, because it's a way that I think so many people who listen to what we do can relate to this. Of We talked about kids becoming more self-sufficient in this time. They have.
Mhm.
I've got a 15-year-old son. He does his own laundry. If you want
Mhm.
laundry done, like, we got enough things going on right now, you can do your own laundry. He does the dishes. Now they've started to cook some meals. They're doing those things. I know it's not just happening in my house. So these things are becoming a thing. They're becoming more self-sufficient. Spain in 2008 had to become more self-sufficient internally, not just externally, right? So
Mhm.
this change causes us to look inward and say, how it literally radiates from what you've talked about. Quit looking. You don't have a recruiting problem. That's not what you have. You got solutions sitting right inside the walls of your building,
Mhm.
right? So, and it's fixing that. So I don't like that. That can only be a positive thing. It can only
Yeah,
be a
and
positive
that's
thing.
shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. It was a big part of my book, and it's probably going to be something worthy of a whole nother book as my follow up, which is we have to think differently about talent going forward, and this is a real leadership moment. I mean, if there's ever been a leadership moment, it's now.
Yep.
And you've had your leadership test. Your employees would like to say that we've been watching how you've been handling the pandemic. It's the hardest thing that you faced in your working professional life, probably. And so now we know, what if you've passed that test. Now we're excited to see how you can change how we continue to build value in a longer term uncertain work environment, because we're not going to hit stability right now. But I think we're starting to see enough models of the same refrain you and I have been referring to for probably the last 6 months, which is we get a phone call, hey, we're really struggling. Well, how are you struggling? Well, we can't hire, we can't keep people. Okay, how are the bottom lines looking? Oh, really good. Bottom lines looking really good. Okay. So how we define success and what that looks like, I think we're going to see some changes on that.
Yep.
This whole
Yep.
notion of I feel, and again, this is a bit of a controversial terms, and my HR brothers and sisters will probably start choking when I say it, but I don't think we should continue to measure employee engagement. I think that's not something that's as meaningful as trust. Are you building trust? Because trust is the baseline that engagement's built upon, and trust, I think, is something that's so important to building that equity in that relationship, so that people are going to be a positive force in the universe, whether they work for you or whether they don't.
Absolutely.
And that's not something where we've seen people be as intentional about. It's like, oh, we've got these managers, people really like them because they trust them. Well, have we been rewarding it, encouraging it, growing it, identifying it? No, it's all been sort of this murky engagement thing. I think there's too many things for people to feel crazy towards that are going to impact their engagement that you can't control right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not even worried about it. I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to sort of help you get through this and make you better, you know? And I hope that it lands you in a happy place. But there's too many things out of my control in your life, at home, and so forth, that are going to contribute to that I cannot control. Which so I think we're going to have to come up with some new measures of what organization success looks like.
And
One of the
and
things that
and and
when we got
and I think,
started, Shane, with this with this
yeah,
whole podcast series, one of the ideas I had. Sorry, I just got
no,
excited. I
you're
don't want
fine.
to lose this idea, but one of the ideas I had for our show was that every show or two, we pick a couple of companies and we're going to do them the work week after hours. What kind of rating are you going to get as a leadership team worthy of us sending our friends and family to recommend to work for you? And what have you done that's worthy of that? Because I would get asked that question all the time. Well, who are the companies that you're really excited about? And I think they're looking for the shiny object. And sometimes by the time you recommend them, the leadership team has changed and it's no longer the company that it was. But
Sure.
yeah, just something I was thinking about.
Yeah. So you and I are both familiar with the culture of the All Blacks. So that's the rugby team in New Zealand,
Right.
and they are. It's very, very popular. If you've read into any kind of leadership stuff that crosses over into sports, you'll come across some of these stories about how they all clean the locker room. They all play a part in leaving something better than when you found it. And that is essentially the foundation of, so the local people there are called Modi people. I intimately know the country. I feel like I'm probably, if you ask a lot of people there, they would tell you I'm honorary Kiwi, but um, that is a lot of their culture is leave it better than you found it. Right. So I think that is, if we want to talk about culture, we want to talk about all these different buzzwords that, employers have been throwing around for years that you're the best at. Well, show me better than you tell me. So by showing me better than you tell me, if you show me that you leave the people who come and play a part in building what you're doing, when they leave you, they're better than when you got them.
Yep.
Right. So that essentially is the culture of what we want to do and say, like, hey, I want to be a better person. Like when I go into a friendship, you and I started as a friendship. We didn't start as a business relationship or anything. It was like, and so I pick my friends based off of, this is a person that I feel like is going to make me a better person. Right. Maybe it would be a surprise to some people. Maybe it wouldn't. You and I often talk about things that have nothing to do with work. It's about life, and it's about parenting, and it's about relationship stuff and helping our friends that are going through something, or, these different things.
Yeah.
I think, how can we treat, like, that has to be a thing. I threw this out there. I don't know, in a side conversation we had a month or so back. It's like, when the whole better.com thing happened, of like, oh, we're going to speak negatively upon people who are leaving. And to me, that's a huge red flag, meaning I think we're entering into a world that, what do you gain by publicly devaluing a person who came and gave you all that they had, whether it was good enough for you or not? That's okay. That can be debated. I'm okay with that. But they gave you all that they had. Even if they didn't, maybe it didn't line up right. Maybe you didn't relay it properly in your interviews. Maybe your managers that they were working under sucked. Like, it's like there's so many variables to somebody not working out in a company. Why can't we go and put, you opt out? If you let me go, you give me an opportunity to opt into a network or to a database that you build, and it's a website, and I can go on, and I'm a recruiter somewhere, or I'm looking to hire, and I can go look, and in the last 14 days, these employees have left, they left Google, and I can go on, and I want to reach out to them and contact them and try to hire them here.
Yeah.
And it's doing these things. I think, like, culture used to be like you said, the shiny objects or the nice amenities or these cool things. All that stuff's great. I think to some extent that stuff's never going to go anywhere. But what are you putting in place that when I do leave and I do depart this place, that is going, like I want to feel like you actually care about me? And that paradigm is shifting. And we've talked a lot about the future of work. I think remote work gets a lot of play. It gets a lot of buzzword stuff. Everybody's trying to figure it out. You talk about compensation. That's going to be that plays a factor in it. And not just how much we compensate someone, but I think you've phrased it as, instead of compensating someone for the value for the longer they're with you, compensate them for the value that they bring you. And I think that's huge. I think that's huge.
Yeah. And I'm so happy and relieved to see more movement in that space.
Yeah.
Because we just haven't had it prior to these last 2 years. And I think
is it ripe for disruption? That area is maybe one of the ripest for disruption.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I said, not only how, but what is considered, rewards. Things like time off was always important, but mental health is really important now. And we're going to have to reconcile this year in particular, I think, this notion of how much work can a human being really sustain in a healthy way. And that's a tough question because we've got a lot of folks who grind it out, and that's the only way you're going to thrive. And some people really do thrive on that. I think it's got a short shelf life, but I think the recognition of the value of wellness, moving from the, hey, we've got an on-site gym, we're going to reimburse you to go to the 24-hour fitness, to it's much deeper and more valuable. And that's sort of more of a community share. And to, something you brought up earlier, which is, I think candidates are expecting more from employers. Like, you need to give me, not just pay me well, but give me a good environment, give me good leadership. Show me that you make a difference in the world, in the community. Show me you have got a philanthropy strategy. Give me some transparency to how people are getting paid here and rewarded, and how much of our profits are going to, help the community or reduce our carbon footprint and so forth. I think we're going to see movement in a really good direction this year because of all the pressure that and power that employees have.
So we talk about these pieces of the future of work that kind of make it all up into one. I think another one of those pieces is the the entrepreneurship. I know it's sometimes referred to entrepreneurship, but it's still an
Mhm.
entrepreneurship piece.
Yep.
Thinking about, we've got really smart people, we've got problems. Instead of not everybody's going to have money to just go throw at a problem. Maybe we should hire out and allow, maybe teachers should only teach 4 days a week, and then 1 day a week we have different teams and they come together and we just try to run through and solve solutions. We find out what people are interested in. These people really like working in sports and academics, and that crossover. How can we make this more efficient? How can we, and then instead of thinking of this job as this cookie cutter piece of it, what are we willing to do? I think the other piece is the interview process. You and I
Mhm.
have joked about this and laughed about it, but I think I think maybe we're already here. I don't know. I think I'd love to talk to some people who are going through it. Are we now in a process where, as a candidate now, I'm going to start interviewing you? I'm going to
Mhm.
sit down and, okay, Steve, you want me to come work here at LinkedIn, but and I know you're saying I'm really important. I'd actually like to talk to your CEO. Is he around? Oh, well, he's not, I mean, it's not something we normally do. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if the CEO doesn't have time for me to ask him a couple of questions, it's probably not the place for me. And we got to normalize that, right? Like that,
Mhm.
like if you're the leader, are you not are you not the person? Like, if people want to ask you questions, like, how is that? Like, I don't want to talk to you, Steve. I'm not going to be working for you. Like,
Right. Yeah, well, I'm probably the wrong person to ask because we turned the corner, and Silicon Valley turned the corner on this one. For if you're
yeah,
hiring software engineers, you already have to be doing that the last 10 years. I mean, not always a straight line to the CEO, because a lot of these people are too afraid to speak to the CEO. Like,
sure.
you're probably not, Shane, but there's a lot of people like, I don't need that stress. But I think your point is well taken, which is power in the hands of the employee. And yeah, I've said it before. We've said it on earlier episodes, which is this transition is going to accelerate this year. Of companies need to understand the journey of the candidate first before you start selling your journey on the candidate and helping them get to where they want to go, even if it is not with your company, as long as you might like, based on traditional views of how the relationship used to work. And but we're already seeing like, hey, I want to work these days, I want to work these hours, I want to, I want to have this kind of cubicle, I want to have these sort of
Hmm.
headphones, noise canceling headphones.
Yeah.
We talked about one case we've seen where someone got an offer for a contractor or regular employee, and I'm seeing that proliferate, and also the destigmatization of being a contractor or being a temp. More high quality staff is going independent, and that's going to force so much, because the entire infrastructure of most economies are built on people working for somebody else,
Hmm.
having a paycheck, having a pension, a 401k match, is the case in the US, or RRSP in Canada, superannuation in Australia, et cetera, et cetera. It's all built around that. And we're going to have to start to untangle that. We saw in the beginning of 2021, a new classification of employee in California was put on the table called Prop 22, which is a hybrid employee and gig worker. Unfortunately, that was really driven by the healthcare policy, and the fear of gig companies having to carry too high a quote burden to pay for the healthcare, which is a knock on the healthcare system. If it's too expensive for an employer, maybe we need to look at the expense of these health plans for people. You and I know the taste of that is independent entrepreneurs. I mean, it's very expensive,
Yes.
and to the extent that you did some research around the world, and there's other countries that offer very, very different areas of value in the same way that companies are going to have to do that.
So that's what I want to maybe I'm going to actually give an example of that, because I think there's a lot of people who maybe are trying to decipher, maybe who will listen to this, say, well, yeah, being a full-time employee, there's people who would like that security. Let me peel back and give you one financial example of how being an independent freelancer, self-employed, whatever you want to call it, right? There are certain tax benefits to me I get if I set my LLC up and register, and we tax ourselves. We're still an LLC, but we tax ourselves as what's called an S corp. So one of those benefits are I can max out my self-employed 401k at $61,000 a year. And I can also max out my spouse on that employee 401k, even if she has another job somewhere else. I can do that. It's not a loophole. It's just it's in the tax code. It's there. That's $60,000 if I'm an employee working at, we'll call it LinkedIn, and I'm going to make $400,000 a year, and I'm working remote, and I'm living in Kentucky. My expenses aren't super high. You're helping me accelerate my retirement. You're helping me. So by you allowing me to work as a contractor, you're allowing me. So why would I leave you? You're willing to help me do this. So I'm sharing with you. This is why. Now, I also think it takes more community. Like this isn't, I want to make sure this is clear too. These solutions won't only happen if it's only on the employer and leadership. It takes communication on
right,
the individual contributor, on stating what you want, realizing that you have power. Now, I would argue that it's creating a safe space to allow those, like that interview process. This is where the interview process changes, right? Did you know if you were a freelancer, you have access to these things? I'm not a tax accountant. I can't tell you, but there's benefits, and we want to make sure you understand those because we want to help you, right? That's imagine telling that to someone who's trying to make that decision and them not realizing that. And they're like, oh, well, so that's $120,000 a year that goes into that I can choose to be tax deferred. Whoa, wait a second here. Now this is a game changer for me. And that's where I talk about, let's help people in this process. Let's be an education source. And fear, I hate it. I can't there's nothing I'm terrified of. I'm not met another man on the planet that makes me uncomfortable. So well, I won't get into that one, but outside of so if we're going to operate off of fear of, well, yeah, but if I educate them, they're just going to leave and go somewhere else. Like, that's not leadership. That's like if you're concerned, then they didn't really want to work there anyway. If that's
right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's leader defense. Yeah, you're playing not to lose, or because you have to. I was on a call with a friend of mine earlier. She's CEO of a company, and she's got a compliance training business that's doing incredibly well. M-Train, Janine Yancey is her name, and she's phenomenal. And a question I had for her is, what percentage of your clients hire you to check a box, and which of your clients hire you to help them get better? And she said, well, do you really want to know the answer to that one? And I said, well, I kind of knew the answer to that one, and it's like, this is the whole deal where I think leaders have a real opportunity right now, which is, don't play because you have to. If people know now, because the world is so true, they just know if you're not walking the talk, you're just talking the talk. They just know. And I think we're going to see more intolerance of crap, like that. Like that's why I'm curious about better.com. Like, how is this going to play out? Because if people just got their annual bonuses and they just, the leader got exposed for who he was, and the whole ecosystem that put him there and thought he was good has all been exposed now. So what are you going to do? You're just going to sit on the gravy train hoping that this is going to be a home run and then we're out? Because what happened at Uber was the ugliness was revealed, And as soon as there were a liquidity event and the restrictions were lifted, you did not want to drop your keys at the exit because you would have got trampled trying to find them. Like
Yeah.
people were gone. And you could almost set your clock on the LinkedIn, talent insights tab if you have the pro account, and see, you can track attrition, and you just almost see, okay, go public, 3-month lockup. As soon as that comes off, people, if the stock's doing well, they're out.
Yeah.
And that's not something to be proud of.
No.
But we should start tracking that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because it's the venture dollars that are behind it. You and I have talked about the ethics of investors.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole ecosystems that are just breeding these negative outcomes that are just, they're continuing, and we need to find a way to put an end to that.
Yeah. And it's just normalizing. A lot of it has around to do with communication, right? I think that has a lot to do with more and more people now. I think more and more investors, and we'll call them institutional and or individual investors, meaning whether it's a fund or, Mark Cuban, for example, those people have brands. And I think there's going to be a lot more questions again. And there should be. If there's not, if you're out there looking for a job, know that it is absolutely okay to ask, who are your investors? And can you give me a little bit of insight and bio on them? I want to know who these people are. I want to know what they've invested in. I want to know what their track record are. I want to know those things. And I think oftentimes those questions don't get asked because there's a level of uncomfortable. Like the job used to be, I want to make sure I don't say any more than I have to because I don't want to screw this up and get this opportunity. And I think we're just in a world right now where screw that shit. Like, let's actually talk about the meat and potatoes of what's going on here. Mm-hmm. If you actually think I'm valuable for your company, I got some questions. And I don't know that you're the person that's going to be able to answer them all. And I understand that, but I hope that you're the person that can help me get the answers to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people that are doing interviews, when that comes up, they're not going to know how to respond. They're not going to know, like, and that comes into realizing the future of work. This is part of it. This is part of that change.
Right. Because that old world thinking is like, oh, we've got someone who's going to feel really entitled. They're going to be complaining about everything. Next candidate.
Yeah.
But
no, that means you actually care.
Yeah.
That means you actually care. So if I tick a box on things you care about, odds are you're going to give me more. You're going to work harder for me. You're going to see, like, hey, I'm not just here to tell you I'm going to work hard for you, right? I want you to see I'm going to work hard for you, right? Like, it's not a thing of, like, whether even like why are we giving a bonus when it's on schedule? Right? Why not give a bonus when the person deserves it? Like, who cares when it comes down? So I think there's just so many things that, and I'm pumped because some of the stuff we're working on is, ways to kind of immerse this into the workplace and help with the leadership aspect of it.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think that's worth talking about here a little bit, Shane, in that I think after you and I got started this past year, I think we're starting to see that our place is to try to unlock new ways of thinking, new ways of leading, new ways of building talent strategies that are really going to help you thrive and help your organization improve in an uncertain world. And that's, I think we're finding in the few countries that we've been testing this out in, there's a real hunger for that. And I always get nervous when we start talking about really pushing the envelope around things, like me saying things like, hey, I think next year you're going to hire more on what people can learn than what they know. And they start going, oh my God, yeah, I totally agree with that, but my boss is not going to buy into that. I'm like, okay, well, do you believe it? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about how we bring that to life and how you can help bring that to life in an organization it's not that they don't want to believe it. They're scared. They're scared because it could upset their power balance,
Yeah. I'm gonna actually say this, and this may not be a very popular opinion, but sometimes leaders, I would even say not sometimes, a lot of times leaders, they know they don't have all the answers, and it is a breath of fresh air for someone who works, we'll call it for them, and for context, comes to them with an amazing idea that's like, yeah, you know what? you just saved my life. This is it.
Mhm.
Like this is it. Like just because we're in a position, for the sports fans, I'll give you a really cool little story about this. So the Harbaugh family, football family, we know all about them. So you got Jim Harbaugh, who's the head coach at Michigan. Son John Harbaugh is at the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Dad, who is Jack Harbaugh, was a longtime assistant. Was assistant for a guy named Bo Schembechler, legendary coach at Michigan. He spent some time at Michigan. Then he took over a program in my hometown called Western Kentucky University. Basketball school, one of the top 10 winningest Division I basketball schools historically, still is in the
Mhm.
country. And um, they were going through a rough transition with the football program. At the time, they were considered what was 1AA. Jim was the starting quarterback for Chicago Bears. I happen to know the family. Their sister worked for my dad, babysat my brothers, and so I know the family.
Mhm.
John, at the time, who's the head coach of the Ravens, was an assistant coach at the University of Indiana. Jim is the head coach or the starting quarterback for Chicago Bears. He's going on vacation long before cell phones. So I-65 runs from Chicago all the way down to Florida. They're driving through, stop through in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He walks in to surprise his dad in the coach's office and walks in, and his dad, who's the head coach, who should have all the answers, right, is sitting there with his hands in his head. And he was like, Dad, what are you doing? He's like, son, we're done. We're done. Now, if you know anything about the family, he's raised them. They have these mantras of attack every day with, an excitement, enthusiasm
Mhm.
unknown to mankind. Like that's their thing, right? So he was like, what do you mean we're done? We're hardballs. Like, we're not done. Like, no, like, tell me the problem. So he starts telling the problem. He's like, no, we're going to fix this. He goes out and gets his kids and wife out of the van. They ain't going on vacation. We're going to solve this problem. So we're going to stay here. We're going to figure this out. He says, well, why can't I be an assistant? Because they were essentially told the budget was cut. You have no paid assistant coaches. He was like, well, wait a second. He was like, why can't I be a coach? He's like, well, son, you're the head coach or you're the starting quarterback for the Bears. He's like, so they go to compliance. Compliance says, yeah, you can be a voluntary coach. Yeah, sure. No problem. He calls his brother up, who's an assistant in the end. He's like, I want the list of everybody you're recruiting, just under everybody you're recruiting, because you're the Big Ten. We're 1AA school.
Mhm.
Want whatever. He's like, cool, no problem. So his son, again, it's solving the problems with the pieces that you have. And sometimes the leaders don't know those pieces exist. Now, as that story actually unfolds, one of the first people he reaches out to is a gentleman by the name of Willie Taggart. Willie Taggart was playing football at one of the top high schools in all of Florida. He comes in to recruit Willie. Willie goes on to win, which is essentially like the Heisman of 1AA, goes on to be an assistant coach with him at Stanford and other places, went on to be the head coach at Western Kentucky and then Oregon, left Oregon to take over at Florida State, still a Division I head coach, these different things. So I know it's a story that's a bit random, but even this head coach who had these very successful sons, he just needed somebody to bring him an idea, and they go on to win a national championship. Like he
Yeah.
built the program back up. Like there's these situations that we don't know all the answers. There's oftentimes I call you and say, hey, I don't know. We're working on something right now. I'm like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I need to lean on you. I need some stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And vice versa. And as a leader, sometimes we got to have that.
Yeah, I got another great story like this, and it also it conjures up for me the need for us in hard times like this to really be more purposeful in pulling people's ideas and input, like really gathering it actively, not passively. So I'm coaching my son who's 11. There's an NJB, National Junior Basketball League, here in Silicon Valley, and it's our first year, and my assistant coach and I didn't know each other before. We're now like really good friends. His son was 13 and no, his son was 12. My son was 11. So I think it was like 5th and 6th grade was the league that we were in. And that's how they did. The 5th and 6th graders were combined. And so we're in the championship of our game. And we struggled a little bit early on and then we figured it out and we were just rolling. And we were rolling because we had really good kids. And my friend had drafted the team because I was on a business trip. But it was mainly like get my son's friend and get your son's friend, and it wasn't really too much about skill. But we did have the number one pick, who turned out to be he's now a one of the quarterbacks at University of Washington. So I think he's low on the depth chart. Anyway, so we're playing this team. They've got this kid who's like 6'2", and at that age, you don't run into kids who are 6'2", and that team had not lost a game, and we practice in the same gym as them, and they're always like, "Hey, this is our court." They're always big timing us, and we're like, "Wow, they're a really good team," and they're running it like army drills, and we're just like, guys are throwing half court shots at our practices, and we're just a little bit loose. So we go in like we're 8-2, and they think they're 10-0. So we are down like 6 at halftime, and so my friend Mark, and I both go, I think we need to change it up. We're gonna have to do something different. And we look to the kids and say, what do you guys think? And this one kid, Teddy Purcell, who was the quarterback at Washington, goes, I think we need to go box and 1. So we're like, and he goes, and I want to cover the big guy. And Teddy wasn't super tall, but he goes, I want to cover the big guy, and we're going to do the box. And we're like, okay, let's try it. Well, that team had faced, 2-1-2 zone, 2-3 zone, and they faced man-to-man, but they've never practiced for box and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And we frustrated them. But we went to the kids and said, what do you guys think? And Teddy's like, let's try box and 1. Or if that doesn't work, let's do a triangle and 2. We'll just double team that tall guy because he's killing us. Yep. And that's what we did. And so the coaches are looking at us like, what are you doing? That's illegal. Like, it's not illegal. It's a defense. But that sort of novel approach, turning to your team and asking them, I think that's powerful leadership, and it was, we joke about it now, but when we share look at the trophy, but it's a great story.
But you created an environment to where that was comfortable to do. And I think that's the biggest, that's where leaders, like, you can't expect everybody to come to you. So you have to create an environment and model that environment that breeds that innovation, that says, hey, no matter, you just started here 2 weeks ago, like, do you have a solution? I'd love to hear it. I'd love to right. Like, absolutely. And I think that's that piece of it. And, there's so many things that, and I think I want to wrap it up kind of hitting on this. There's so many things that the other piece of future of work you've hit on is work environments and companies and workplaces becoming more human.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And a lot of people say they are. And then you look at their spreadsheets and you look at their financials, and they invest the least amount of money in their people. But they're going to up the marketing budget 30%, and they're going to increase the CRM spend in sales, and they're going to do these different things. And if one of these things that I hear a lot that is becoming consumer driven is the experience of the consumer. We've got AR, we've got VR, we've got go to a movie theater, and now my seat shakes when I go to the movie theater, or it's 3D. I think we've got to like that. I think that has to become a holistic piece to what is our experience of our employees? What are we investing in the employee experience? What are we investing in the onboarding experience? What are we investing in the recruiting experience? We were talking about sports. If college sports recruiting programs can put a jersey with your name on it and a highlight reel, and we talk about this when we're recruiting you, does our ego get in the way of us doing that when we have the resources to help our people? If this person who's a critical hire, that if you don't hire this person, it's going to take you another 6 months, and so much is going on, why would you not research this human being? I know I listened to Gary Vaynerchuk in my early days as an entrepreneur. He was Hackcess. He was vlogging every day. And he told a story that he learned, and I carried this with me into how I rewarded my team. Mm-hmm. So he tells a story about how he was working at his dad's wine store, and he knew, like he's very much like me. He has an intuition about people. He you pick it up. Well, this guy had ordered a case of wine, and he goes to one of the employees there and says, "Hey, like, find out what you can about this person. I want to thank him for buying this case of wine." And the guy was like kind of a jerk to him, like it wasn't super great. And I'm probably missing pieces of the story here, but he finds out that he's a sports fan of a team. So like again, and we can research now where we can find out anything you want to know about a person if you just look on the internet and find out what they
Mhm.
like and those different things. So he went and got a jersey signed by one of the stars in the history of this team and had it sent to this customer. Never heard anything. Customer never said anything, nothing. And then like out of the blue one day, this customer shows up and orders like this astronomical order of like wine and spirits. He's having a party, but then went like we're just going overboard and like not wanting a discount, paying like extra, all this stuff.
Right.
And he's like, what? And they were like, why? We're like, well, somebody here sent me a jersey. And man, if you guys are willing to think enough about of us, like a little thing like that. So I translated that into, celebrating when we would have a record month, and I'd go buy a couple, $300 or $400 or $500 bottles of champagne. And most people would look and say, oh, well, why don't you take them out to dinner? Well, I can go out to dinner and spend $500. They're not going to remember that. They can probably go eat there individually on their own. But none of the people who were working with me at the time would have ever went out and paid $500 for a bottle of champagne. They probably seen it, say, oh man, must be nice. They walk right by it when they're in the liquor store.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, oh, let's celebrate. Let's get them. I want you to taste a little bit of success. And I'll never forget the first time we did it, we only had red Solo cups. I forgot to get champagne glasses when I was there. And they were like, no, like, let's drink it out of the red. So like, that's kind of the symbolism. Like, so here we are drinking $500 bottle of champagne out of a red Solo cup. And you're going through, and then it got to be like a thing. Like we'd have a record month and I'd go buy a one of a kind, only 4,000 bottles of this vodka. Let's go try it. Like, we're not getting trashed. It's just the enjoyment of the craft of what that is, to celebrate and to kind of take a moment and reflect and say our thank yous and appreciations and those kind of things. And what are we doing to invest in that employee experience while you're with me, before you're with me, after you're gone? Yeah. Like that. I think that's another piece of that holistic new future of work that I'm so pumped that we're maneuvering around.
Yeah. And just to put a bow on that, I mean, I see the world has forced us to get to know each other better. We've had this moment in time where we've all shared this crazy ride, and we're continuing to share it. And I know your family more. I know you more, no matter what you do. And that just adds, I think, the depth of trust and relationship equity that I hope that we really leverage going forward. Because we spend all these hours working, and it's a shame if we don't, feel like we're growing and as you say, the All Blacks do, like leaving people better than we found them. People, teams, companies, whatever, families, and yeah, I've got so many stories like the one you shared where just a tiny little thing. I wrote a blog on this one time around 2 words that matter called Good Morning. And after mediating hundreds of employee manager disputes, I basically wrote a story that said, most of these disputes come down to blah, 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 blah. And they don't even say good morning. They don't acknowledge me as a human. And I get it, man. We got so many things to distract us, to worry us. But let's just take that 2 seconds to say good morning. And the power of that is just, you made an observation, Shane, when you were visiting here. You're like, man, when I walk around Kentucky, everyone's like, how you doing? How you doing? All those people in Silicon Valley, it's like they are into their podcast, and no, there's not even eye contact. People just walk by.
I went for a walk.
One of the reasons why I'm getting weary of this area for that reason.
I went for a walk to give context what Steve's talking about. So where the area Steve lives in, I won't give your location, but very prominent area in Silicon Valley. So I went for a walk. Steve was out doing some family stuff, running an errand or something. I was like, I'm gonna go out. The weather was beautiful. I'm gonna go get a walk. Well, I'm 6'6". For those people who don't know me, I'm a big guy, got big shoulders. I'm a bald head. I got a beard. I guess I can be an intimidating guy. I'm very kind unless you force me not to be. I went for a walk, and I didn't know the area, so I didn't have my headphones on. I don't know the area, people, dogs, nothing. I don't know. I want to know if I'm getting surprise attacked by a pit bull somewhere, right? So I was walking, I was saying hi to everybody. And no one was sent, like they're moving around me, like they're
Like,
walking.
no,
And I'm
we don't do
thinking,
that here, sir.
I came back and I was like, wow, I said, I can point it out the first difference. And you like, what's that? I was like, man, I said hi to about 14 people. I said, the cops are liable to show up here. Like, hey, there's some big guy walking around saying hi to everybody in the neighborhood. But it was like that thing of like, it's just be more human. Let's just be more human. And I think it's safe to say, Steve, that people like you and I are saying this, realizing that we understand you may not know how to kickstart some of these things or solve some of these things. And I think that's the cool part about some of the stuff we're working on, is to help reframe that thought process and spark those ideas and put some of those methodologies and things in place. And I think 2022 is, I'm so pumped for this year.
Yeah, me too, brother. Me too.
I'm excited. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
so happy New Year to our audience. Thank you for following us last year. I mean, we are really just getting started here and finding our groove, and we're looking forward to delivering some really good content throughout the year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank everybody who tuned in, who listened in, who messaged in. We're going to start doing some new stuff, and I need to actually put this at the first of the next episode. Steve and I are actually going to be able to put a poll up on Spotify. So Spotify have some new features where we can put a poll up and ask a question and you give answers to, and some different things. So I think we may start playing around with that a little bit, and, just to kind of engaging in a few things and that kind of stuff. So it's, man, another great episode, and a great episode to kick the year off, and really pumped for this journey we're on, buddy.
All right. Well, the Work Week After Hours, Steve Caddy, and with
Shane Howard.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.